What's up, Cough Country folk? Welcome back. It's Steve with the news, and you can tell by this little thing up here, it's time for Cough Country News. And we're starting out with continuing our Strains of Yesterday series, and we're going north. I mean really north, all the way to Alaska, and Mother Trucker, they got some good weed. It's a legendary strain that you might remember, and I'm going to tell you all about it in just a second. Then, we ask the serious question, what happens if your dog eats your weed? Dogs process cannabis a little bit differently than people do, and it's not necessarily great for them. So check it out. I'm going to tell you what you need to spot and what to do about it. All that right now on Cough Country News. Yeah.
No sticks, no seeds, just news.
From the Cough Country News Desk, it's Steve with your cannabis news.
We are coming for that thunder. It's the Strains of Yesterday, and we're taking a trip up north, way north, to find a strain so rare they said it went extinct. The mythical Alaskan Thunder F K. It's reported to be a creeper. You know, it starts soft, then it hits you with a big cerebral high, followed by a nice body relaxation, settling into some heavy couch lock. Alaska is a little too far north to have any native landrace strains, other than some cannabis ruderalis that breeders use for autoflower genetics, and check out our video on cannabis ruderalis for more on that. The environment's just a bit too harsh up there. So it wasn't until the 60s and 70s, when all the best strains were traveling up the West Coast, that Alaskan growers were able to start experimenting with crossing these landrace strains to find something that they could grow. So why were these marijuana enthusiasts traveling from the sunny shores of California all the way to Alaska? Well, in the late 70s and early 80s, Alaska was kind of a safe haven for cannabis. In 1975, this attorney by the name of Irwin Ravin got himself arrested for possession on purpose in order to protest the anti-pot laws Nixon had put in place. Alaska has this funny thing in its constitution that grants its residents unfringed privacy, like they were really intense about it. So when the court looked at that constitution, they decided that since simply possessing marijuana didn't make him a danger or anything, it didn't give the police the right to violate his privacy and search him for the weed. So he should never have been arrested in the first place. And bada bing, bada boom, possession essentially becomes legal in Alaska. Apparently the first time it appeared, it was shared by some mystery guy who was calling it Trapper Creek hash bud. Trapper Creek is a tiny town in the Matanuska-Susitna Valley. Then a High Times article in 1975 with our lawyer Irwin, he was just calling it thunderweed before giving it its full name, Matanuska Valley Thunder F K, and thus put the strain on the map. The Matanuska Valley is about 50 miles north of Anchorage, safely nestled between mountain ranges. It's got great volcanic soil, fertilized by glacial silt, and the valley is on the southern coast, not the inland tundras. So in the summer months, it gets relatively warm with nice humid winds coming off the Pacific Ocean. So there's a short but intense growing season. So once it traveled to the lower 48, no one could say Matanuska. So it became Alaskan Thunder F K. So if you're in the Matanuska Valley, it's just thunder. If you're in Alaska, it's Matanuska Valley Thunder F K. If you're anywhere else, it was Alaskan Thunder F K. And by the mid-'80s, the war on drugs was ratcheting up, and the DEA started targeting Alaska with its loose marijuana laws pretty hard, especially targeting those growers who were growing the in-demand strain. And they were cracking down on everybody driving Alaskan cannabis underground and indoors. The MTF pretty much disappeared at this point, with its survival story kind of fading into myth. So some say that the original guy got busted and the real strain died out right then and there. Some say that people got in before the crop died and stole a few clones, and it survived through a few private growers that were able to stay off the DEA's radar. Still others say that the strain was given to the Hells Angels to keep safe during the drug war, carrying the legacy of the thunderweed into the 90s. And any way you cut it, whoever got a hold of the strain guarded it pretty closely. So today, most connoisseurs of the strain say it's been all crossbred to hell. And if you find it in the continental US, it's very unlikely that it's the real deal. But one grower, Ron Bass, was credited with rediscovering the strain in 2017. He was working with Jim Ross, who has been growing the Valley Thunder clone to clone since the 80s, when it was the real deal. Some guy named Tiny thought he was going to be raided and asked Jeff to save his plants, and Jeff passed it on to Jim, who's been growing it ever since. So even though some people will tell you the real Alaskan Thunder F K they were smoking in the day has been lost to time, this OG grower makes one of the better cases that the legendary strain is alive and well, even if it is rare as fuck. Guys, thanks so much. Be sure to stick around for just a minute. We've got a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more news for you. Don't go anywhere.
This is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. And this is cannabis. When you put them all together, you've got medicine.
All right, welcome back, guys. Thanks so much for sticking around. More news now. Over half the country lives in a state where cannabis is totally legal, and 75% of people live in states with medical programs. And everywhere else, you can pretty easily access hemp-derived alternatives like Delta-8. And with all this cannabis out in the open, more and more dogs are finding their way into their owner's stash. Reports of marijuana toxicosis in pets are up 300%, and there's been a huge increase in calls to pet poison hotlines. No one wants to put their pet in danger, right? But if your pup does happen to eat your weed, what do? Well, first of all, cats can get high too. But it's usually dogs that'll just gobble up anything within reach. Cats don't actually have the taste buds to taste sweet things, so they tend to pass on all those tasty edibles. But even the plant itself is toxic to them, so munching on the buds or the leaves can still send them into a state. Your little buddy processes marijuana much like you do. It interacts with the endocannabinoid system to have all sorts of effects on the body and mind. But a dog actually has more cannabinoid receptors in the brain than people do. So the effects of THC go kind of into overdrive and can become toxic in their system. A little bit goes a long way, and that's the problem if the pooch smells some of those cookies you've got on the counter. They won't stop at just one. They'll gobble the whole thing, and that can lead to a bad time pretty quickly. It's pretty rare for pets to die from cannabis exposure. You know, the threshold for fatality is generally pretty high, but it has been known to happen, especially if the weed came with something else that was toxic to the dog, like chocolate. So if you're worried your pet might have gobbled down on your ganja, watch out for these symptoms. They might have some trouble walking, keeping their balance, and that's the main one. In a study, 90% of dogs had trouble with that kind of coordination. They can get that glassy-eyed stare, the dilated pupils, sometimes hyperactivity is a sign, as well as drooling or vomiting. It can affect their heart rate and body temperature, and in intense cases, cause tremors and coma. And if you see any of that, the best thing you can do is to seek out a veterinarian's advice. In those more extreme cases, they can administer fluids to the dog, keep them hydrated while they wait for the drug to pass through their system. They can even administer intralipid therapy, where they infuse lipids or fat molecules through an IV, and the THC bonds to them, making them easier to eliminate from the body. They might need to induce vomiting or administer activated charcoal, which can absorb toxins in the system. But otherwise, you're just making them comfortable while the trip does what it does. Put them in a safe place. Put them where they can't hurt themselves if they get disoriented. Make sure it's warm enough to keep their body temperature stable, and get them somewhere quiet and dark to prevent overstimulation. Just let them chill out until they feel better. And all in all, the best thing you can do is keep them from getting into it in the first place. Keep your cannabis stored safely and out of your pet's reach. If you're growing your own, whether indoors or outdoors, make sure it's somewhere your pets can't get into. And be careful with CBD as well. CBD is not toxic for dogs like THC is. In fact, it's been shown to do a lot of good things, from helping with arthritis pain and anxiety to cancer treatment and seizures. But one funny thing that CBD does do is it inhibits a chemical in the body called cytochrome P540, which is what the body uses to metabolize most drugs. So if your pup is on other medication, it could interfere with those medications or allow it to build up in their system to toxic levels. Guys, thanks so much for checking us out. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Hell, tell a friend, tell them to like. And check us out next time. Come back here where it's always no sticks, no seeds, just news. Thanks so much, guys. What's up, Cough Country folk? Welcome back. It's Steve with the news, and you can tell by this little thing up here, it's time for Cough